Hello and good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to our Long COVID webinar on today, Thursday, the 24th of June. I'm just going to let the attendees who are waiting to log on. I can see the numbers rising as we're talking. I know we've got lots of new people who are joining us today, and I just want to let them join in before I get into the meaty bits of today's webinar. So for those of you who are still here, I am always grateful for everybody joining me in these webinars. I do hope you find them helpful. The format is always the same, but of course today we have got a lovely guest speaker who's going to be joining us today, Anna Harrington, and I'm going to talk to you a little bit more about her. So I can see those numbers starting to settle down now. So if you all want to grab your glass of water, sit back and join Anna and I for the next hour or so while we talk to you about long COVID and how to manage that within your business. For those of you who know me, it's Angela Clay from HR for UK. For those of you who have not heard of HR for UK, who are we? So HR for UK is a leading provider for HR and employment law support. We also provide payroll and pension services, as well as health and safety. We've got over 3 years experience, and we've got some fantastic 5-star reviews. But don't take what I say. Our reviews are, go and have a look at our website and read for yourself what our clients say about the services that we provide to them. So it's me, Angela Clay, as an HR and employment law solicitor and managing director of HR for UK. I'm responsible for HR for UK's role as a leading professional in HR services, supporting businesses in the UK with every aspect of HR and employment law that may come across your desk as an HR manager or even as a business owner. Right from the very beginning, when this COVID outbreak took hold, can you believe it? It was March of 2020. We are now here, June 2021. But at that time, I was really keen to make sure that your business comes out of this crisis successfully. And at that time, it was just to get you out and through that crisis. I think we are well beyond that now, but my vision hasn't changed. My vision is to make sure that your business remains legally compliant by sharing knowledge and offering you a clear, professional, practical advice and support throughout any matter that you may have. So today, of course, we are going to be talking about long COVID. We are going to be covering things like, what does the ACAS Code of Practice say about long COVID? Is long COVID a disability, and do employers need to make those reasonable adjustments? How can employers manage the risk of long COVID in their businesses? How long can long COVID, affect employees, and in fact individuals, not just employees? Having a look at those red flag symptoms and what employees should not be doing. So again, you do have a responsibility as an employer to make sure that employees don't do certain things. How to know when an employee may be ready to return to work after having suffered from the effects of COVID and long COVID, and what employees with symptoms are likely to need when they do return to work. And of course, that all-important aspect of how do you actually get an employee back into work after being off from long-term sickness absence as a result of not only COVID, but the topic today specifically about COVID. Please do ask questions. For those of you who are familiar with the platform, on the right-hand side, there is the question box. Please do pop those questions in, and we will come to those questions at the end of the webinar. For those of you who are new to the webinar platform, on the right-hand side, you should have a facility to be able to ask a question. Please do ask those questions, because if you are thinking of a question, there is more than likely at least one other person in the room or the virtual room who will be wanting to ask that same question. Do bear in mind, it doesn't have to be about the topic today. It can be about any HR or in fact any occupational health question that you may have, either for myself or for Anna at the end. These webinars are only as helpful as what they are in topics that you want me to cover. So if you do have anything that you do want us to cover in future webinars, please do let me know, and we will have a look at that. So for those of you who may need to nip out, perhaps need to go and do a school run or go and get a drink of water, whatever the case may be, don't worry, this webinar is being recorded and all the resources that come out as a result of it will be made available to you afterwards. But please do contact us. You can get in contact with us through our website, which is www.hrforuk.com, or you can give us a call on 01455 444 222, and one of us will be able to help you with your query. But of course, you can drop us an email through our website. Of course, you can drop us an email through our website, but you can, of course, contact us by sending us an email at info@hrforuk.com. But let's move on to today's webinar, because of course that's why you are giving up your time to join us with today. Just this morning, we know that the BBC was reporting that more than 2 million people in England have suffered from long COVID. Now, long COVID is an emerging phenomenon that is not yet fully understood, and it's not universally agreed definition. But what we do know is that long COVID has broad range of symptoms after the initial infection, including fatigue, coughs, chest pain, headaches, and muscle pain. While most of people who have suffered from the COVID illness seem to have their symptoms pass quite quickly, but there are some who have been left with symptoms lasting for weeks and some lasting for months after the illness is gone. The National Institute of Health and Care Excellence defines long COVID as something lasting more than 12 weeks. So that kind of fits in quite nicely with, understanding what that long-term effect is going to be. And it affects someone's ability to work, or causes them to have prolonged sickness absences, whether that is for long periods at a time or even at short periods, intermittent to short periods. Of course, as I've said today, I'm co-hosted today with Anna Harrington, and I'm going to pass you over to her very shortly, just to take you through some of, the more detailed bits about how we can have a look at it from an occupational health side. But before we get to that, I'm just going to have a quick look at what the ACAS Code of Practice says about long COVID. Now, ACAS issued some guidance on the 30th of April of this year. It is very short guidance because there's not much that we know about it at this point in time. But it really, the advice and guidance that they are giving does deal with long COVID in the workplace. Essentially, it makes four fairly common points. They're common sense, really, about health problems and making sure that they are discussed at an early stage. And employers support their employees who are suffering from the effects of long COVID, and having a look at how they can support them by possibly offering flexible working and making those reasonable adjustments. Given that long COVID can present a series of, either long-term sickness or intermittent sickness absences, and that's all really depending on the symptoms that the individual is going to be suffering from. And as I say, fatigue and poor concentration is only some of the symptoms that you see having an impact in the workplace. And those are the ones that are probably going to, you'll be able to see, will be quite easily give rise to disputes really early on. Because are you fatigued because of doing something else, maybe watching Netflix until too many early hours of the morning, or is it genuinely as a result of the impact of long COVID? Poor concentration can also arise from perhaps other medication that an individual may be taking to manage other sicknesses or illnesses that they may have. But again, it's about looking at those interruptions that it is going to be having to your business, but it's also being very, very mindful of potential hidden disabilities. And we know that the data is supporting that long COVID can be exacerbated by people who are older or of an ethnic minority. And those individuals are likely to have a greater effect of long COVID. And if you mishandle that, you could potentially also be involved and have it intertwined with discrimination issues. But employers need to plan how they are going to be managing those long-term absences and the impact of long COVID. Just very quickly before I hand over to Anna, is long COVID a disability, and do employers need to make those reasonable adjustments? As I said early on, we are still gathering that data on the effects of long COVID, but we know that it is a serious effect on physical and mental health, and the data is starting to make that a little bit clearer for us. The ACAS guidance does acknowledge that it is hard to know at this point in time whether long COVID will be a disability, but we are adopting the approach that it recommends that whatever approach you do take is that you do adopt the same process as you would do for long-term sickness absences, by making those reasonable adjustments, allowing for workers who are suffering from the condition, and really recognizing that it may very well amount to a disability. Just a very quick legal aspect on it. Of course, we know that disability is defined under the Equality Act of 2010, should I say, as a physical or mental impairment that has substantial and long-term adverse effect on your ability to do normal daily activities. Of course, we know that substantial means that it is more than minor or trivial. We also know that long-term means that it is capable of lasting for 12 months or more. But given the array of the potential symptoms of long COVID, it is possible that it will satisfy the legal definition of disability in some cases. And employers do need to be aware of the risks and their legal obligations that they have to make those reasonable adjustments to minimize the risk of any disability discrimination. Employers can manage the risk of long COVID, and again, the ACAS guidance recognises that the effects of COVID may come and go. It's not for a set period of time. The symptoms are varying from one individual to another. Practically, of course, this will make it harder for employers to be able to manage in the workplace, but you do need to approach it in the same manner as you would do any other long-term or intermittent health problems with your employees. Don't let absences, whether they are long-term or infrequent, run without discussion. And I think the key thing is having those open and honest discussions with employees. Talk to them. Open channels of communication, because that is the best way that you are going to be able to prepare your business to be able to manage long COVID. And engaging with employees early on regarding their symptoms and on their return to work, and I know Anna's going to go into all of this in a lot more detail, will help you manage your business in making those reasonable adjustments. And of course, reasonable adjustments will depend. It'll be different from individual circumstances, both from the individual person as well as the size of the organisation and the resources that your organisation will have. It's not a one-size-fits-all. It really is about individual specific circumstances. And it will include a whole variety of different measures that you can be able to do. For your employees and for your organisation. So enough from me. I think I've said everything that I need to do about the legal side of things. So without any further ado, I am going to hand you over to Anna. Anna Harrington is our occupational expert. Some of our clients have had the pleasure of speaking to Anna. I know that we have had some fantastic feedback about the support and guidance that Anna has given to our clients. Anna is a specialist community nurse in occupational health. She's not only, helps with occupational health, she has additional learnings in mindfulness, positive psychology, and cognitive behavioural therapy. So Anna has got plenty of experience behind her. She's the best person to be able to get into your organisation, to be able to help you with long COVID and much, much more. She's got over 20 years of experience dealing with all sizes of organisations on the health and well-being of employees. So Anna, over to you.
That's brilliant. Thank you so much, Angela, and to your team for inviting me here today, and also for that introduction. I'm absolutely delighted to be able to come and talk to you today about long COVID. I've become quite obsessional, some would say, I would say passionate actually, about long COVID. The reason for that is because it is a difficult and complex problem from an individual health perspective, but also from a business management perspective as well. Because I'm so obsessional, passionate about it, I'm actually part of the Society of Occupational Medicine Multidisciplinary Task Force Group on Long COVID. That enables me to have a greater understanding and influence on national guidelines and things like the NHS plan for long COVID, which actually was just released a few days ago. So money is being secured from the government to put into place health structures in the NHS to manage this condition, but it is very problematic from that NHS point of view as well, which is another reason why I've become so determined and engaged on this, to keep people up to date and informed with where we're at with things. Okay, so I do have a slideshow, so I'm just going to click this show screen now, so hopefully you can all see that. I'm just clicking through. There we are. So 1.1 million people is what the Office for National Statistics said back in March. 1.1 million people experiencing long COVID symptoms. I knew at that point, I knew that actually the figure is going to go up. And here we are today with the announcement, which was from Imperial College London, their ongoing research called REACH2, which has revealed 2 million people reporting long COVID symptoms. It wouldn't surprise me if it's more than that. I think a lot of people are managing symptoms because they are on furlough, so not necessarily speaking up about them. I also think there's quite a bit of fear as well about people coming forward and speaking up about the symptoms. They may not either recognise that what they have is long COVID. Very important for the workplace. It's the figures at the moment are showing that the age group of 35 to 69 years are showing the greatest number of people with long COVID symptoms. So that's, you know, they're going to be obviously the working age population. The TUC brought out their position statement and report and research that they've done on it. That came out probably last week. One of the statements within that is that 80% of respondents to their research say that symptoms affect their ability to work. And as we go through this presentation today, you'll probably come to the same conclusion as me, which is, well, yes, of course they will affect work. Okay, so what is long COVID? Yeah, well, you know, it's something that is really difficult to get a precise, clear process of diagnosing. The process of diagnosing any illness is precisely that. There are significant sort of stages that occur within it, including usually things like medical investigations. But a lot of any diagnosis procedure is about the narrative. It's about the way the person describes what has happened to them and when certain things have happened. So long COVID is actually a very wide-ranging set of symptoms that fluctuate. And they are very individual based as well. So not one person will have all the symptoms. They are symptoms that cannot be explained by another diagnosis. And I think that's a real important point here. If anybody's got any doubt about whether this is long COVID or not, that statement there, so those symptoms cannot be explained by any other diagnosis. And they are also describing a history of having the acute COVID. So when they were ill, when they thought they were ill with COVID, there is no need for people to have had a positive COVID test to then go on to be diagnosed with having long COVID. And the reason that that's being stated in the national guidelines is because at the very early stage of COVID, there wasn't the availability of testing that is now currently available. Long COVID, we're beginning to, when I say we, I mean sort of medical and health professionals, we're beginning to get some understanding of what is happening in the body. We recognise now that it's a multi-system, actually COVID, acute COVID, is a multi-system illness. If you remember right at the beginning, originally it was very much thought of as like flu, it's a respiratory condition. We now know that that's completely wrong. Actually, this acute COVID has the potential to affect every single body system. And that's the same with long COVID. It's beginning to be understood that it affects the clotting mechanisms in the body. It affects the inflammatory processes within the body, and it also affects the immune function. So 3 major body processes become disordered with long COVID. And this is why you see this very wide-ranging symptoms and why it affects all these different body systems. It doesn't matter how severely you've had acute COVID. You could have had acute COVID very mildly and not been hospitalized. In fact, just this morning I was doing an assessment on somebody, exactly that. Before being ill with acute COVID, somebody who was very fit, a marathon runner, had COVID symptoms very mildly, did actually test positive. 6 months later, they have long COVID symptoms that are impacting on their work abilities. Okay, so these are what is termed as the red flag symptoms. These have come from the national guidelines on long COVID. It's important as an employer and an employee that they're just aware of these symptoms. So if they are not improving or they're getting worse, if they're experiencing any chest, cardiac pain, if they're experiencing palpitations or a rapid heart rate, they might not describe it as heart pain or chest pain, but they might describe it as chest tightness. Any new confusion and any breathlessness that is getting worse. It's really important that the individual doesn't do anything that they find to be physically exerting. I'm emphasizing that they find part of it, because of course we all have different abilities, so it's got to be seen within an individual perspective. Nothing physically exerting until they have been checked out by their GP. The national guidelines are actually specific in telling the GP what to do. I've been having to tell employees, I've having to quote to them the national guidelines so they can quote to their GP actually what they need to be doing. It's not yet feeding through to the GP. Part of this links back to what I was originally saying about the NHS funding of it and that management side of it. Again, if you're a business owner and employer, to don't just take it for granted that actually the GP will have done everything. You need to actually be possibly getting occupational health involved. Of course, I'm going to say that because that's what I am. I think it's a strong reason for that statement now. But very least asking your employee, well, What did your GP do? Have you seen your GP face to face? Did your GP listen to your chest? Has your GP taken any blood tests? Has your GP sent you a chest x-ray or for a scan? Okay. So symptoms are all about how it makes you feel. So I've talked to you about the red flag symptoms there, but here I've listed some of the other symptoms that an individual may be complaining of. The most impactful symptoms and impactful on day-to-day living, so getting washed, dressed, doing household tasks, being able to leave the house, do social activities and enjoy hobbies and interests, and impactful on work are the fatigue, breathlessness, and the brain fog. Brain fog is about your ability to concentrate, your ability to recall information, and during my assessments, I can see that in people. They're just taking time, they're searching for words or for information. You might clearly say to me, oh, I can't remember, I'm really struggling. And also it can affect people's ability to decision make. It can affect their ability to process information. Some of the symptoms of long COVID, and I will identify only some, are very similar to other illnesses or conditions that you may have already heard of, called ME or chronic fatigue syndrome. Certainly things like the fatigue, the brain fog, the joint muscle aching, very similar to those conditions. So later on, when I talk to you about some of the self-management techniques that people are required to learn with long COVID, a lot of that information has come from people who've been experiencing and living with chronic fatigue syndrome or ME for a long time, or people who've been living with things like rheumatoid arthritis. So just to refresh, the symptoms that are likely to be work limiting, the brain fog, the fatigue. Now, the symptoms are likely to also impact mental health. So it's not that this is caused by mental health. It's the other way round, okay? The symptoms of long COVID are very likely to increase people's anxiety and increase their occurrence of low mood. Breathlessness, and this can be breathlessness on very minor things, such as walking up the stairs at home. People who would normally be able to do really great levels of exercise are finding that they now can't walk longer than 20 minutes. And that's not walking fast, it's not walking up a hill, 20 minutes on the flat, and they find they're out of breath sufficiently for them to need to take a rest and to stop. And then the overwhelming fatigue, which I've identified here as both physical fatigue with that arm, as well as the mental fatigue with the brain. So work is really, really important for people. Again, as part of my assessments, I ask people, what does work mean to you? And more often than not, I get a really passionate response about how I love the people that I work with, I love the organisation that I'm employed by, the work that I do has a real sense of purpose to me, it gives me a great sense of fulfilment, it gives me routine for the day, and it makes me feel fulfilled and satisfied. So returning somebody back into work is going to be important for their own recovery from ill health, and also assist them with some of that mental health that comes along with this. But of course, it very much depends on the safety aspects of the work, and it depends on an organisation's ability to accommodate adjustments that are going to need to be long-term and fluctuating. I should also have said earlier on, actually, the majority of people do recover from long COVID within a 12-week period. But a significant number are going on to having symptoms for 6-12 months plus. There are, my latest count, there are 22 Facebook groups for long COVID, and some of those groups have like 42,000 members. And if you just dip into those groups, you will see and hear people's narrative about how long the long COVID is going on for. So again, when Angela was talking earlier about the application of the Equality Act and defining long COVID as being a disability under that piece of legislation, I will be erring on the side of caution and saying, well, first of all, do they have impairments on day-to-day living? Well, it's very likely that they're going to be telling me, I struggle to get dressed in the morning, Anna. I can't put my items of clothes on without sitting down and taking a rest. And then, Anna, I managed to go and make my breakfast, but after I've done that, I need to take another rest. Anna, I can't now go and do my supermarket shopping because it's just too much. It's too fatiguing for me. The Equality Act definition of disability is also about the accumulation of those impairments. So it's not just one impairment, it's all of those impairments together. Could they be considered to be substantial? And I probably, if I saw you, probably you would be nodding going, yeah, they are substantial. So the next question is that going to be long term, 12 months or more? And actually the definition asks for that to be considered without having access to any treatment. So yeah, I'd be saying, yeah, I don't really have any evidence to suggest not. I have more evidence to suggest, yeah, could very well be long term. Also, what I'd say with regards to that, last week the TUC report, that report I mentioned earlier, they've also got a statement in there saying that they are campaigning for a change to the Equality Act legislation. Currently, the Equality Act legislation has certain conditions listed like HIV, cancer, MS, that's multiple sclerosis, where there is no need to test the impairments. There's no need for people to fit that definition of disability for the Equality Act to be applied. The TUC are wanting a change to the legislation to mean that applies to long COVID. So automatically on diagnosis, people who've been diagnosed with long COVID, that piece of legislation would apply, which means that there's a greater responsibility for businesses to consider if adjustments are going to be reasonable, and if they are reasonable, then there is a need to implement them. Okay, so I have actually leapt quite a bit ahead there, so let's go backwards. So when might it be suitable for a person to return to work? When the individual is able to have a good, consistent routine of doing normal day-to-day tasks, getting up, washed, dressed, household chores, cooking, shopping, cleaning, being able to do some leisure activities. They're able to do that consistently without having that many occasions for what's termed effective rest. Effective rest is different from rest. When they're able to have good restorative sleep, it's really common for people with long COVID symptoms to say that their sleep has been disrupted. Sleep is so important for recovery from ill health. When they're able to be emotionally balanced and contextually appropriate, so again in my assessments I'm testing that out with them. People who are experiencing this type of ill health condition, coupled with the poor sleep, coupled with the raised levels of anxiety and low mood, could very well find that they are more tearful, they're more irritable, and those emotions are just breaking through when they don't want them to break through. When the individual has got sufficient levels of concentration and memory to be able to, for instance, watch a film or read a book without suddenly realizing, actually, I've no idea what's going on here. I haven't actually taken in anything there. And of course, when there is a less of a need for effective rest. So the potential effects on workabilities. All of these symptoms will wax and wane. There are going to be some days when your employees feel very, very able. They feel more or less fine. And they feel as though, oh my goodness, it's gone. Long COVID's gone. And there is that kind of, yeah, just, oh, a relief, massive, massive sense of relief. And unfortunately, that isn't necessarily the case. They may find a week or two later that they're experiencing symptoms again. So it's incredibly frustrating for you as an employer. It's frustrating for them as an employee as well. So it means that they will have reduced physical stamina as well as mental stamina. Mental stamina is about the concentration. It's about emotion management, and it's about sort of memory recall as well. They will have reduced physical strength as well. So, you know, not being able to lift an item that prior to this they would have been able to lift because they've just lost all their strength. It may very well be affecting their balance as well. So if you've got employees that are working at height, you've got to be very, very cautious about that and maybe actually prevent them or stop them from working from height whilst they're experiencing long COVID symptoms. They may have a reduction in the range of movement as well that they're able to do. That's relating to the joint muscle aches and pains that can occur. So when you're thinking about bringing somebody back into work, what you should be trying to aim to do is for a consistent and sustained return to work. So I urge you to do quite a bit of planning beforehand, and I encourage individuals to plan as well. So the first thing that I ask people to do is to list the demands that they have in their job role, and alongside those demands, indicate whether they feel, it's only a perception and subjective, whether they feel that they are high, medium or low demand. That will then assist you and them to be able to construct a phased return back into work. Okay, big caution here. Normally a phased return back into work is 4 to 6 weeks. With long COVID, it's not going to be amenable to those timescales. So instead of a phased return to work, what I suggest people do is what's called a work trial. So they go in on reduced hours, try to increase those hours and demands. When they get to the point of saying, actually, I can do no more, hold that still. It might mean, and this is where Angela's team will come in to discuss this with you, it may mean a temporary change of contracts in order to do that. Don't forget to ask about their commute to work. Commutes can be incredibly energy and time demanding, and that time taken from the commute means that they've got less time to recuperate and they've got less time to do social, leisure, home activities. And as healthcare professionals, we really want people to be doing activities at home that are actually pleasurable and uplifting, because that helps with their mental health. It helps them cope with some of these difficult symptoms. There's going to be a real need to prioritise on tasks, and the line manager working closely with the employee so that the employee doesn't get overwhelmed. They know what they should be working on and they know where they should be channeling their energy and time. And reviews are really important to make sure that the person feels supported. It's really important for you as an employer, so you know where they're at and how they're performing as well. And what I would say is that you might not have anybody off work with long COVID symptoms. You might have people who are in work, but they're struggling. They're struggling to perform and complete the tasks that you're asking of them. As part of when they are working and return back into work, they need to be doing these principles. So stopping before they get too tired. So we sort of say use energy and work at your comfortable maximum. When you start to feel that fatigue come in, you mustn't push through the fatigue. If you push through or try and push through it, you will have it accumulates, and then you will have a situation where, boom, the individual actually can't work anymore, and they can't work for days or even weeks. It's called the boom-bust cycle. Ideally, it'd be great if they can have an opportunity to take effective rest at work. Now, effective rest is different from normal rest. Effective rest is disconnecting from anything that is stimulating. We normally consider rest to be, for instance, sitting down, reading a book, listening to music, scrolling through social media, chatting to friends. All of that is energy demanding and stimulating. Effective rest is remove all of that, go and lie down or sit down in a place that is quiet, in a place that is slightly dark. So removing anything that could potentially be stimulating. That could be very difficult to put in place in a workplace. But it's about doing the best that you possibly can. It's much easier for people to do effective rest when working from home. Give people control as much as you possibly can over their pace of work, over their break periods, and over their work environment. Lighting, heating, noise are all stimulating, and adjusting those according to how they're feeling will actually enable less energy consumption and for them to be able to work more effectively. Pomodoro working is fantastic for people who are struggling with concentration. It requests that the person does short periods of concentrated work between 20 to 25 minutes, then take a 2-minute break. They do 4 cycles of that, and then they have a longer break. And those breaks are going to be about using effective rest. Look at changing the way of doing things so they're less energy consuming. Sitting down, is it possible to sit down to actually do activities? Other things like activating the blue light filter on your computer screen so that it's less demanding of the eyes. I'm rapidly whisking through this. So I thought it would be also useful just to sort of touch upon likely or possible aggravating tasks as well. Heavy or frequent moving and handling is going to be provocative of fatigue and provocative also of increasing joint muscle pain. Work that is emotionally demanding. So are your employees dealing with clients who might become aggressive or distressed? Are your employees having to use a lot of emotional skill in managing those clients? Is the work inherently stressful? So dealing with members of the public, having to make emergency and rapid decision making, that's inherently stressful work. Complex analysis of data, so not just volumes of data, but it's the complexity of that data as well. The environmental perspectives. Is the environment in which they work very busy and stimulating? If it is, then it's going to be more energy consuming, which means that they'll have a lower amount of time that they will be able to work in those environments. Having low levels of personal control is actually very psychologically demanding as well. If there is a need in the role to be rapidly switching from doing one thing and then doing another thing, switching between using one IT system to another IT system is also cognitively demanding. Any static postures, whether that's sitting or standing for longer than 20 to 30 minutes, that's sort of what we call as static posture. which quite frankly, we all sit for longer than 20 to 30 minutes all the time, really. Anyway, it is very, very physically demanding. And as I'm doing now, lots and lots of talking is very demanding and might aggravate feelings of fatigue, being unable to cope. It'll limit the amount of time period that they're able to do that work. So we touched a little bit earlier on the content of reviews, asking about how are they feeling, how are they coping, are they managing to save energy to have a good work-life balance. Really, really important when we're looking at a sustained return to work. The well-being, the reviews are also about planning the next stages of work as well, and allowing you as an employer that time to reflect as well on what can you sustain here as a business. You know, like I say, it is very demanding on employers. Giving lots of feedback that is uplifting. Uplifting feedback doesn't always have to be about praise. It can be corrective feedback, but it's about the way that feedback is given. It's given in a way that the individual feels able to do it. They feel confident to make those changes. They may even feel that actually this is great because it's developing me. It's developing me personally or in my career. Okay, so that is a real, you know, rapid whistle-stop tour of long COVID, the effects of long COVID potentially in the workplace. Recognise that it's both sickness absence and you might have people in work who are just not able to perform up to the required standard due to the ill health symptoms. And we've covered off some ideas about adjustments, what you can do, consideration being given to the Equality Act application as well. And now it's over to you, really, to fire away and ask me questions. I'd love to hear those questions. And Angela, you take over.
I am back. Anna, that was absolutely fantastic. It was so insightful in actually getting a little bit more information on actually looking at what the impact of COVID is and actually understanding a lot more about COVID. You know, it's something that, you know, from an HR point of view, we do speak to clients about it. But of course, we are looking at it from a business point of view and getting those employees understanding all of that. And you know, it was really, you touched on all the topics you know, very well. So thank you very much in terms of, you know, providing that insight. I'm sure all of our viewers, you know, have taken away, if not one or more nuggets of information that we perhaps didn't know at that time. So usually at this point in time, I know, Anna, you've invited sort of some questions. We've got one or two questions that have come in, but I think before we turn to the question side of things, I'm just going to very quickly sort of do a quick whistle-stop tour on where we are with the furlough updates. We know that we were supposed to celebrate Freedom Day earlier in the week, but of course, sadly, you know, the restrictions were extended for a little bit longer. But despite the recent extension of lockdown measures, there has been no matching corresponding extension to the government's coronavirus job retention scheme. So that means the scheme which subsidises wages for employees who are on furlough, in other words, those who are not working either for some or all of their hours, will still come to an end on the 30th of September, and employers will have to start contributing to you know, the furlough hours from the 1st of July. So it really is a real step change in terms of the furlough updates. So the current scheme is the Coronavirus Job Retention Scheme pays employees furlough, whether their usual working hours, 80% of their salary for their unworked hours. And of course, we know that this is capped at £2,500 per month, pro rata for those who are on flexible furlough, in other words, those who are working some of their hours and some of them who are not working any of their hours. Of course, we do know that employers must pay the national insurance contributions and the minimum employer pension contributions. as well as pay for those hours that your employees do actually work. You do need to maintain that. We know that from the 1st of July, that is going to change. So from next week, the amount the employees will receive will still remain at 80%, but the government grant is the piece that is going to be reducing, and that's going to drop down to 70% of salary for unworked hours, and the employer must now contribute 10% towards those unpaid hours. They must also pay the national insurance contributions and the minimum pension contributions for that employee. There is a second and final step change on the 1st of August through to the 30th of September, when the scheme winds down and comes to an end. The employees again will remain on receiving 80% of their wages, but the government grant at that point will drop down to 60% of salary for unworked hours. And of course, the employer must then contribute 20% to those unworked hours, and of course the employer contributions that I've already mentioned. So furlough is definitely going to be coming to an end, even though there has been an extension to those lockdown restrictions, but there has not been a corresponding extension to that furlough scheme, which I know is going to make huge difference to some organizations and some industries. And I would welcome anyone who is struggling and not really knowing what they are going to do when furlough comes to an end. Do get in contact with us, because we will be able to help and support you and guide you in the right direction. So let's go to those lovely questions that we have got. The first question that I've got is a very important and a very good question, is how can an employer get access to occupational health? Well, we've got the lovely Anna Harrington who will be able to help you. If you have any need for occupational health, whether it is long COVID related or otherwise, please do get in contact with HR for UK, and we will put you in touch with Anna, who I know from having supported some of our existing clients through their occupational health. Do get in touch and we will put you in contact. Don't suffer on your own. Get that expert help. Expert help is at your hand, so don't suffer on your own. So we have another question here. The question is, my employee is currently signed unfit to work. How long can she be on sick before her contract terminates? Now, that's a very good question, and there is no straightforward answer. The key thing to remember, though, of course, is the contract will not automatically terminate if an employee is being off sick or has been absent from work for any given period of time. The employment will continue until the employee either returns to work, resign, or the contract is terminated by going through due process before, by the employer. It's really, really important that you do not just simply terminate an employee's contract of employment because they have been off sick. An employee does have protections, particularly if it falls in the scope of the Equality Act. If you fall foul of that, the compensation limits are unlimited in terms of discrimination. So it's really, really important to make sure that you get that right. And if you are not sure and you want to get second opinion, of course we can get occupational health in to understand what that sickness absence is all about, because it may not be on the face of it what you think it is. It could be a number of things. I would always advise employers to be cautious when you are deciding to take action to bring an employment contract to an end because of sickness absence. It is individual, it is based on a case-by-case basis, so do get in contact so we can help you to make sure that we keep you on the right side of the law and make sure that you deal with any sickness absences appropriately. So thank you for that question. The next question we have is, can you have long COVID if you were asymptomatic? So Anna, I think that's a good question for you. So we know, you know, people are super spreaders, may not even know that they you know, haven't had COVID. Sometimes it actually comes as a shock to find out that they you know, have had COVID. So, you know, what is your insight that you can share with us in relation to having long COVID if you didn't know that you didn't have COVID in the first place?
Yeah, so assumably what's happened here is that the person has tested positive for COVID. They were surprised by that result because they, like they said, didn't have any symptoms whatsoever. So yes, in theory, they can go on to have long COVID, because if they tested positive, that means that they do have the virus, therefore the body is fighting the virus, therefore there is still the potential for those disease processes that I was explaining. So the immune system, the inflammatory process, and the clotting disorders, for them to occur and result in the long COVID symptoms. But there's also that statement about, can these symptoms be explained by any other diagnosis? So does the individual have any other diagnosed ill health conditions? And how do they relate to the current symptoms that they are describing?
And that is so true. Thank you very much for that, Anna.
Okay.
We were a bit light on questions this week, but I know that you know, we will inevitably get questions as we do after the event. But of course, don't worry, anybody who is on the call, they will all be collated and they'll be sent to you, which actually comes to this next question that has just popped up is will we be able to share the PowerPoint presentation so we can have a look at later? Of course, we will be getting that presentation from Anna. It will be collated with the questions that have been asked, the questions that generally tend to come in after the event, together with this recording. We will pull that all together and it will be made available to you early parts of next week. So, you know, but again, you know, being able to have those PowerPoint slides, you know, and having the benefit of listening to the recording, of course, you will be able to have that. So another question that has just popped in is the return to work process. Is there any help that we can get in terms of managing that? And the answer to that is twofold. From an HR point of view, of course, HR for UK can help and support you with that return to work process, but actually it's a twofold process, and having occupational health involved, particularly when that individual has been off for quite a long time, or perhaps where there has been that intermittent you know, sickness absence, which is starting to have an impact. They may be off for a week, they may be off for longer or shorter, whatever the case may be. Those return to work processes are really, really key, because it's during those return to work discussions, those open and honest discussions, is where you actually uncover a lot of the underlying issues. And it's in those conversations where you are able to identify where your employee is going to need help and support going forward. And of course, having the benefit of occupational health in supporting you with those kind of conversations and those processes will help you in the long run. It doesn't matter whether an individual has been off for 1 day, 1 week, 1 month, however long it is really important to make sure that you do have those return to work conversations. Not only from you know, a business point of view on what support and reasonable adjustments that we can do, but of course it goes a very long way in supporting your employee with you know, having that understanding, that well-being that is so important, because of course we all know that your employees are your biggest assets in your organization, and it is your responsibility to make sure that you look after them, and mental well-being as well as physical well-being all is part and parcel of that. So that is everything that we have got today. We're having some fantastic feedback. Thank you very much for the webinar. In fact, I'm telling you, Fibs, we do actually have a few more questions. We've still got a few more minutes, so if it's okay with everybody, I'm going to carry on with those. They are coming in fast and furious now. I'm going to blame it on the internet that's going to delay that. So I'm going to go through those. But of course, if you do need to leave, you know, I won't hold it against you, and you know, do look out for the slides. So Katie, we've got a question here from you. Thank you. The question is, what if there have been no COVID tests but still suggested at long COVID? I think the question here is, you know, if a doctor cannot, Katie, I think that is forming the second part of your question. So I'm going to read the second part of the question, and I'm going to hand it over to you. If a doctor cannot diagnose an issue, they can't just say that it must be long COVID. It seems to be an easy cop-out response, and Katie, I understand where you're coming from. So I think, Anna, how do you think we can answer that? You know, because you know, if there have been no COVID tests,
Sure.
you know, how can we genuinely make that diagnosis that it is long COVID? Because to me, it seems that, you know, potentially, you know, that's just going to be, you know, there must be, if it's nothing else, then it must be long COVID. How do you foresee that that is going to be addressed in the future?
Yeah, well, I think we need to think about, why are we wanting a name? Why are we wanting that label? Why are we wanting that diagnosis? Now, from a clinical point of view, it's very important because that takes you down different treatment paths. But from an employer point of view, does it matter whether they've been given the term long COVID or not? Because it doesn't change the fact that you've still got an employee who is telling you that they've got ill health symptoms that are limiting them in their day-to-day activities and being able to attend work or being able to perform up to the best of their abilities. So I'd sort of advise you to sort of almost park that. I understand where you're coming from. It is a difficult, all diagnostic processes are difficult actually, which I don't think necessarily people fully recognise. You think you can go to the doctor and get a diagnosis, it's just very rarely like that. And there's always questions being asked, even though you've been given a diagnosis, always questions, and it's tested often by giving treatments and medications and seeing how that works. So, but just park that, I think, and just stick with where your employee is at in terms of their description of their symptoms and their limitations on being able to attend or perform activities at work.
Thank you, Anna. And I think that is, Katie, I hope that answers your question. I think it also, you know, from an employment point of view, you know, we do have, you know, certain circumstances where it is easy just to add a label as to why someone isn't coming into work. You know, there is the risk of malingering, you know, so it's about how do we actually address that? And I think really from an employment point of view, it is having those open and honest conversations, getting occupational health in to understand the limitations that the individual is having in relation to what they can actually do. And of course, getting occupational health involved in it, because from my experience, occupational health normally provides far more of an answer than writing away, and I hope there's no GPs in the room, is that, you know, writing away to get that GP report to get that label. And I think you're absolutely right, is it's not necessarily specifically labeling it, but it's actually looking at what they can and can't do. And Katie has actually come back to say, thank you, it does answer her question. So, you know, it is, I think it's, you know, COVID, long COVID is definitely something that is going to be with us for a long time to come. It is definitely something that we are going to be having to learn to live with, and making those adjustments in our own lives to be able to deal with it. But from an employer point of view, it's being aware of the impacts of long COVID. It's being aware of, you know, what your legal duty is to your employees, what your obligations are, and how you can actually make sure that you can prepare your business, make sure that your business can survive and operate while still having this disruption within your organization with the impact of COVID and the effects of long COVID itself. So that's me. Thank you very much, everybody, for joining me today. We do have our next webinar, which will be on the 29th of July, the summer sun. We are hoping. It's cloudy and grey outside where I am today, but hopefully July will have some summer sun. But what we will be looking at is how I can support you with navigating through the summer holidays with all the uncertainty, with foreign travel, and I'm going to be sharing some top tips for employers that you should be considering, and of course communicating to your staff on how to navigate the summer holidays when the sun does come out. I know we are due to have some revisions on the traffic light system. It's very confusing, but fingers crossed we can all get an opportunity to be able to go abroad and have some of that summer sun. But of course, from an employer's point of view, there are going to be some challenges coming your way, but we all like a challenge. So thank you very much, everybody, today for joining me and for joining Anna. Anna, again, thank you very much. It has been very helpful. But of course, contact us today if we can help you. We can support you with payroll needs, training needs. We've got the Kickstart scheme. Don't forget that HR for UK are a gateway for that Kickstart. Of course, we can help you with that referral to occupational health. So please do get in touch with us. I've already mentioned our next webinar, which is on the 29th of July, 3 p.m, same time. And do remember that we are here to support you. You can get in contact by going to our website, which is www.hrforuk.com. You can give us a call on 01455 444 222, or you can drop us an email at info@hrforuk.com. As always, HR for UK are here to help and support you, so do get in touch. But better than that, have an amazing day and have a fantastic month ahead of you. And I'll see you back here on the 29th of July even. Thank you very much. Bye for now.
Bye, everybody. Bye.